Come to that in a moment. We've got approval of the minutes of January the 31st. Any errors or omissions or comments?
I think they were pretty brief.
Yep. Is that like a mover, Allison?
I'll move that.
All right, that's great.
Second.
We got Fred's for seconding us. Those minutes are done like a dinner. And then on the minutes of March the 13th, errors or
I read
omissions,
the first set.
or
No,
misquoted, or?
Sorry, the March 13th was no quorum, so I've just provided notes for information.
Yeah.
And then the
Oh.
two resolutions that came out of that were emailed in unanimous agreement, but it would be nice to get a live, we can just do a quick, actually in the meeting.
So you should have ratification of those minutes as a late item,
Ratification of email resolutions is what.
which is
Pam
number
said.
3, is 3.1. Okay, so that's
Okay.
why we've got that.
Everybody comfortable that it's
Yeah, the
implied
only-
ratification?
I will support
So,
ratify.
thank you. Michael's moving. Rob, you feel comfy?
No,
seconding?
hang on. We're just receiving the notes for information.
Yeah,
And
so
what
it's-
we're doing now is we're on agenda item 3.1,
Yeah,
Okay.
which is a formal ratification of the following resolution.
So we should have two resolutions then.
Can I ask one quick point, because I wasn't here for that meeting?
No, you weren't here, so you're not allowed.
I know, but I responded afterwards, but the change, the bylaw revision of the new development fee bylaw, is there a provision in that bylaw for it to be reviewed in a year or two?
Yeah,
Like, it is?
yeah.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to know, because it was like 19 years, I think, since it was.
Yeah.
I think we did 2 years, right?
Yeah.
2 years? Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
2 years.
Okay, never mind.
We had it in the old policy that we were supposed to do it annually, and they didn't. So
Okay.
we made it for 2 years.
That's fine.
Hi Joyce, hi
Hi,
Christine.
how are you doing?
Christine, you get the head of the table.
We got two heads here.
Here, why don't you have
How are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make
I'll
sure.
move here.
So, Ms. Joyce, we've just been knocking off minutes. Haven't anything significant yet. So
Nope, I had,
we do the same mover and seconders for both those things under 3 o'clock. Is everybody comfortable?
I know, but this time, right?
I'll tell you.
yeah.
Okay. 5.1, update on financing capital budget. Raj, I know you've got a chart on this. You want to do it this time? Or?
Yeah, we can either do that, or we can just, I mean, that's item 5.2, right?
No, we
It's
switched
Five.
the
It's a
agenda.
new
Oh, we
5.
switched
Well,
it
it used to be
around.
5,
Okay.
it suddenly became
Sure,
5,
yeah,
1.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay,
So-
so what I did, I asked Raj offline, we've got about a $30 million capital budget ahead of us in 5 years, and maybe we could just have an update, which was in the minutes of that last meeting, on how we're raising the dough. So Rob's got an overhead here for us.
Yeah, so my understanding is you were wanting an understanding of the funding sources for the 30 million that is in the financial plan over the next 5 years. And so I've prepared this chart here, which is at a high level with the annual, thank you, Seth. Basically, which shows the annual spending on capital projects by our categories that we've used. And so essentially, if you were to add the first 3 columns up, they are actually the external financing, debt financing, and grant funding. 21.8 of the $30 million is coming from external non-municipal sources. Lion's share being, again, debt financing projected to be approved for the community center, and also debt financing already approved for the fire hall. I'd be happy to answer
So
any.
on that point, if I go down to that column, we've got 2
Yeah.
million we just turned out, give or take 50 grand. And I would have to add what looks like 6.7 million. So based on the plan, if we stay on plan, our debt at the end of this program would be 8.7-ish. Call me a
That's
liar for
correct.
100 grand.
That's
So
correct.
Get some rounding in
Yeah,
there.
6.7 plus the 2 million that we currently have outstanding.
And the grant stuff, the 3 million, we have got that, the 3090, that's in the
The
bag.
3090
The
is
sewer
the-
plant or water plant, or
Yeah.
whatever I should call that thing.
That's approved
That's
grant
in the
funding
bag.
for the water treatment plant.
Got it. So the big unknown is the next one below that, the 3.6 for the community center.
That's correct.
That's, we're still got jump ball.
And it's
on that.
actually split in 2 years, so if you take a look, I've got
Got it.
3650 in 2020
Yeah.
and then 3650 in 2021,
Yeah.
provided the,
And I think,
our
as
application
I
is
understand,
approved.
council's already said, depending on if we get something close to that number, that's gonna ripple back to the go or no-go in the community center.
It's
If we ever get the
exactly,
7 million, then
Well,
it's,
it all depends on what we hear from the feds.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just how much we get of the 7, it's jump ball, what happens,
Yeah.
okay.
When we go into long-term debt like we did with the 2 million, what's the penalty for paying it out?
There is
There is no penalty?
I haven't looked at a penalty, but when you borrow from the MFA, your first opportunity to pay down principals is generally on the 10th anniversary when you go to renew. So for the first 10 years, you would be paying principal and interest. And if you wanted to pay before that, then I haven't looked into the details, but I would assume, I don't think you can, in fact.
So that means that the 2 million that we've put into long-term debt for the community lands is locked in now?
Yeah,
That's correct.
but if we get money and put it away to pay for it, it'll earn income.
Okay, so
And
that's the plan?
And that,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this? I think this is one of the big challenges before council, is how we're gonna fund all this, and obviously it interacts with whether some of these projects are gonna get a go or no go, et cetera. So I think it's just something we gotta keep our eyeball on, this is my personal opinion.
Can we ask
Mhm.
Ross to send that out?
Yeah, I'll
Just
send that out.
ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, any other questions of Raj on that? Nope. Okay, that was a follow-up item from one of the agenda items.
And there is an information piece out too,
Okay.
that's on the website.
I mean, either I can send this out, or I believe there is a copy of this that'll be included in our financial plan workbook, which is published.
Okay.
Oh, is that the
It'll
same
be
schedule?
highlighted. It won't be as detailed as this, but it'll be in our.
Why don't we just
Can we
scan
just
it and
have
shoot it?
Yeah, we
out?
can just send you
Yeah,
guys,
it's
I can
Shoot
shoot this
this
to
one
you
out, then we
guys,
got an
yeah,
ongoing, because I'm sure it's gonna change over time.
yeah,
Without being presumptuous.
okay, I'll send it out.
All right, going back to the Greenie agenda, I think we covered off everything except the audited financial statements. Did I get everything off that agenda, folks? Do we want to put Christine on the spot now?
Depends, yeah,
So there's a two-part,
Generally, I walk through this first, and then we've gone and asked questions on the statement.
I would probably hit my
No,
highlights.
no, that's the closed meeting,
that'll be
yeah.
close, yeah.
So do it the other way.
So what I can do
Statements
is,
first.
I don't know, we're line.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, hitting the highlights.
Yeah, hit the highlights of the numbers, and then we'll come to closed meeting on who's got their hand in the till.
did you want me to hit the highlights of the numbers, and then you can fill in the
Typically, I've
gaps?
done that part, I think you've done that part.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've done that in the
yeah.
past, so yeah,
Sometimes we've done
okay.
that before you got here, because
Okay.
we started so early.
Maybe
in the
that's
morning.
why.
And you're motivated by the ferry of the next actually.
No, I don't think I'll make the 5:15, so I'm fine with time. So, okay, I am going to basically quickly walk through the statement of financial position, statement of operations, and I'll open it up to any questions after that. So, generally, I'm looking at the statement of financial position, which is on page 5, which is a key component of the financial statements. And what this is showing is the net financial position of BIM improved by about 2.1 million over the previous year. The improvement is represented by an increase in financial assets, that's portfolio investments, go up by 440,000, and an increase in net financial assets, which is essentially our tangible capital assets of 1.5 million.
Was there a copy there too?
The 1.5 million increase is largely due to
Oh, okay.
contributed assets that were received this year. We took the Cove Commons. Cove Commons was taken into assets. And also there were developer-provided assets on Foxglove Road, the road, and some water infrastructure that the municipality took in. And the increase is also represented by externally or grant-funded infrastructure additions, such as the Trunk Road addition by where BC Hydro had actually paid for that, and amenity contributions that were received from developers. We received 100,000 amenity contribution for access to the sea, and another 28,000 contribution in the King Edward Bay subdivision by a developer. And that's kind of the highlights on the statement of financial position. I'm gonna jump I should stop and ask if there's any questions on the statement of financial position before I go over to the statement of operations. Okay, if not, then statement of operations is showing that the 2019 annual surplus was $2.1 million, which is approximately $80,000 higher than the budgeted provision. The reason why there is an annual surplus shown in the fiscal plan here is because in the financial plan, when we prepare that, all of our revenues and expenditures are equal to each other and the net effect is zero. However, these statements are presented on a PSAB basis, which means there are certain items according to public sector accounting standards board that should not be taken into consideration in review of the statement of operations. So that's the difference between the zero and the projected surplus. And what I will do is quickly go through some of the larger variances in the from the fiscal plan to the actual year end. So if we kind of go down the revenues, fourth line item is the fourth line down is other fees and charges. And in other fees and charges, we actually had a recovery from BC Hydro for the paving of Trunk Road to the effect of about $380,000. And also, we had higher than anticipated building permit revenues during the year, and we had some rentals revenues that weren't anticipated or budgeted for in the budget, and there are a few other small little items that led to that variance between the 493 and the 920 of reported revenue. In terms of the government transfers line item, 1.95 million, that line is 1.95 million less than budget, and the reason for that is the water treatment plant revenue was anticipated to be recognized in 2018. However, the spending was anticipated to occur in 2018. But in 2018, spending on the project was minimal and will take place in 2019. We just did some land clearing on that project. So we're recognizing the grant revenue as the expenditures occur. So that'll be recognized in subsequent years.
Have we got the revenue, we just haven't booked it, or we haven't got the revenue?
No, well,
We have the cash.
yeah.
We got the cash.
We've got the cash for we've got the cash.
is.
Yeah. We've got the cash for the federal
I
portion,
understand it.
not the provincial.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of our other contributions, that line item is showing quite a big difference, and the difference is due to contributed assets that weren't budgeted for, so the Cove Commons building and Foxglove Road. And we will, in the final statements that go to council, be breaking that line out and discussing it with BDO, and it would be better disclosure simply to show contributed assets as a separate line item, so people know, you're not comparing apples to oranges essentially. And our return on investments was higher than anticipated. One of the reasons was in the budget we didn't take into consideration that we would be earning interest on the almost $1 million of water treatment plant grant funds that have been forwarded to us, so those funds have been reinvested to earn a return. And also due to increasing rates over the previous year. Interest rates were a little bit higher in 2018 than 2017.
When did we get that federal grant?
That federal grant, I believe
2017.
2017.
Yeah, that's why deferred revenue didn't change.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we discussed it at last year's audit.
Yeah. Thanks, Christine. And in terms of expenditures, our expenditures overall are about $375,000 lower than budget. Reasons for that is vacancies across the organization. As you know, the manager of parks position was vacant for part of the year. Environment coordinator position was vacant part of the year. Planning position was filled later on in the year. And also due to incomplete works on strategic initiatives that were carried forward to the following year. So had quite a bit of our strategic initiative work that was budgeted for but was not actually done in 2018. And we also had some savings in third-party contractor consultant services in the water services area. So those three items combined resulted in a favorable to budget variance in our expenditures. Can I answer any questions on the statement of operations? So if not, the next two statements are statements that I have to become more familiar with and generate in-house as we go along. BDO had developed these for me this year, and they actually are more details on the changes in net financial assets and on our essentially cash balance from between the beginning and the end of the year. So they tie into the numbers that are on the statement of financial position and are a more detailed explanation of how they're arrived at. So I'm not quite sure what more to say on that. Christine, is there something that you'd like to add, or?
No, I think it all ties into your investments in capital assets, how you've advertised, and investments in non-financial assets being your prepaid. So for the net financial assets, I think it all ties into the large contributed assets and or cash. So we have split it out here so that you can see what was contributed versus what was actually paid for cash there. So that's the same number that Raj mentioned. We will fix
So
on
the
statement of
surplus was basically eaten up by the acquisition of the tangible capital asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was used for that. And the reason why the fiscal plan is 7.8 and we only bought 2 is water treatment plant, not starting the fire hall and not starting the community center.
Yes, essentially.
And I would say that's a traditional problem municipalities, public sector have, is when are you actually gonna do the capital?
Well,
know,
you have your
you're
budget
thinking
for it
about
on the
you're
basis you might be ready to go and then the grant
Time
doesn't
is-
appear,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the statement of cash flows, similar, you started with a $2 million surplus, but you did advertise your assets, which is non-cash, so you actually had a larger cash surplus, 3.6 million. Of that though, there's $1 million sort of gain or contribution of tangible capital assets. Small working capital changes to get to a 2.6 cash surplus that you've spent on capital assets again, so same story, you've taken your cash surplus and invested in capital assets.
But the contribution of tangible capital assets is sort of, it's an in and an out, right?
Correct.
So it's showing in revenue, but we
It's creating a surplus that.
it's being booked as if we had bought them, but, yeah, okay.
It's being booked as if they were donated, so they
Yeah.
create a
But
surplus.
we're
So
recognizing
they
the
create a
donation as
surplus,
revenue
yeah.
rather than putting it straight into.
Correct.
So beyond the statements, we have notes to the financial statements that actually provide more clarity in terms of the larger numbers that are included in the statements. We got a few minor changes that we've reviewed with the auditors, and Allison had some comments, so that will be incorporating into the final statements that will go to council. Nothing material that would impact them. There were spelling mistakes in a couple of things, a couple of presentation things, and things where tie-ins and confirmations to other amounts. So in addition to the notes,
Well, so
there,
on note 2, there's
Okay.
a brand new item called deferred revenue, long-term loan.
so that was what we're gonna do with that, Allison, is it's not deferred revenue, it's called, actually, what do they refer to it? It's that debt reserve fund with the MFA.
Oh,
It's the
what that is.
20,000 that
Okay.
that's gonna be receivable, so that was a terminology mistake on my part, I should have corrected that. But Christine
So
had,
it's the deposit.
it's a
on the $2
deposit,
million.
and Christine had suggested that we show it in
Yes,
combination
net of the
with, net of the debt. Thanks,
So
Christine.
it's not really a working
Yeah.
capital
Yeah.
item. You can't get your hands on it.
No, we can't.
So this is. gonna-
Exactly,
note's
so we're
change.
gonna change that note and we'll reclassify that amount.
So
Well,
we'll
is that MFA?
That's MFA, yeah, so that was,
Yeah, okay.
so we'll just reduce the receivables and reduce the long-term debt by the same amount.
yeah.
Yeah, makes more sense.
Raj, I had a question on note 3. Is there requirements to invest our excess funds in NFA? I just did a calculation. The differential we're leaving on the table vis-a-vis the credit union is about $74,000 a year. And I appreciate some of this is temporary because of the water treatment plant. And not that we all want to put it in one credit union, but there's other credit unions But if you take those differentials, it's a chunk of change, and you got unlimited guarantee on credit union funds. So, I mean, the chances of a loss are slim and nil.
But if you look at the 2017 return, it was a lot lower. The credit unions are scrambling for deposits, so they're,
You know, but
Those are
maybe the
short-term.
other guys are too. I mean, if
Yeah.
we check that out, I mean,
We'd have to-
74K is a lot of scratch. You know,
It's
just leave
something
that.
we can, yeah,
just
I
leave
can
that
do.
thought. And so my words aren't taking our contact, nothing against
yeah.
our homegrown, but we got 3 million there, so you may wanna call it North Shore or Coast Capital, just to spread the money around a little bit. Even though Central Credit Union, I think Fred, you're probably closer to this than I am, there's an unlimited guarantee.
Yeah.
Unless the whole credit union system goes kaput, so.
But
Actually,
some people
we
will
did-
strategically place it around
Yeah.
the system.
We had done a good report in West Vancouver about the concept of unlimited liability, and there is no such thing as unlimited liability, even though credit unions may say so, but I have to refresh myself
Yeah, if they'll
with,
go.
with the
yeah,
findings
we're
of
all-
the
Yes.
report,
Yeah.
but definitely what I can do
No, I just
is
leave that thought with
do,
you.
yeah, do a report, you know, it's,
Yeah.
it's throughout the year, do a report for the finance committee
Yeah.
in terms of.
It just sort of stood
available
out on this
options.
But there might
There's
be
no
3 or
credit.
4 organizations that it might be
Yeah.
worth considering.
Exactly.
Yeah. They have to be trustees, that's, yeah.
And we have to, and we also wanna have to take a look at, you know, I would, again, it would be a finance committee decision and consideration, but investing local and in your local credit union versus going off of Bowen Island.
Well, I like that a lot. I mean, we got 3 million bananas there, which is, you know, a chunk of change, which is good. And obviously, they're
Is the
loaning it
bond,
out to our citizens.
is the bond fund at market, not historical cost? It's mark to market?
We put it at market when you said it's.
Yeah, so with the interest rates rising, there was probably some drop in the market value of the bond fund then, which may have impacted you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Feds didn't change the rate today, so we're
No,
lucky.
no, 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 no.
Even though Trump's beating the crap out of us, excuse my language. Okay, moving on.
Okay.
The other
So-
thing we'd have to do there, Raj, and I'm sure you're 2 steps ahead of us, is actually do a time chart for the next 2 years and when you need the money.
Cash flow, yeah.
Kind of thing, the two obviously go together.
Okay.
You're probably ahead of us on that.
We're
Anything else?
we're not, given the, you know, limited resources that we have in the finance department, but it's
I thought you were gonna
definitely
take-
good
I thought you were gonna take
planning.
the later ferry
So,
tonight.
pardon?
It's taking the later.
Well, actually, if council approves another FTE, we'd be more than happy to.
I'm sorry. Moving on, a higher plateau.
Well, now next,
Oh, why are you watching
So
my
next,
class?
yeah,
You
like
can do
that
the Excel
next.
spreadsheet.
There you go.
Okay, so basically, towards the end of the notes, after the end of the notes, we have 2 schedules in the financial statement. So the first one is a year over year, we've got 2018 schedule of tangible capital assets.
What page are you on?
Oh, I am
and
basically almost the second last page.
Yeah.
And so the tangible capital assets is just giving you details of the additions by various areas and categories of assets. And beyond that, we've got a segmented, so the very last schedule in the financial statements, Schedule 2 is a segmented statement of operations, which ties into the statement of operations at the front of the book. It's a pretty standard schedule that is published by municipalities.
Okay, we will hear from.
One of the things that we will, sorry, I was just gonna comment that in the final financial statements, there was a misclassification, that 15, when looking at the debt servicing cost for the interest. Essentially, there is an item that you'll notice on your package, which is showing in sewer systems operations, that $15,825.
Yep.
It will be rolled into, it should be in the general government and fiscal services, so it'll be added to the 72,081. It's not a sewer operations item.
So I had a bunch of sort of little clarification points, which I'm not gonna bring up, and they were more typo things, so Christine,
And
Christine's got all those?
yeah,
Okay.
she's got
So
those,
the-
and we've sent a response to you as well.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen that. So the only other question I had, which I think maybe is the note on the capital projects, as to why it didn't make reference to
What's
the
the note
contract.
number?
11.
I'm going to, I haven't talked that over with Alex, I've got to get an updated note to Alex, to incorporate the contract. The water treatment plant, we had a contract for design services with,
Yeah.
with an engineering, WSP, I think they're called.
Yeah.
So I'll get updated information to Alex tomorrow.
My understanding
On
was
that,
we
yeah.
hadn't signed any actual construction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to RFP for the actual project, but we do have one signed contract for pre-design services,
Like the
so,
same as the other two.
yeah. So I'll get the update to Alex on that
And the
tomorrow.
note for the garbage pickup?
And the garbage pickup is, we do have a signed contract for the renewal of the 1 year,
Yeah.
and the auditors have a copy of that.
Okay, that's actually picked up in here, sorry.
It's
So
picked up
maybe
in
I'll
there.
ask Allison, it does say that they, a 1-year renewal for.
Yeah, I was reading that too quickly and I missed that one.
So it is there. Okay, you want to make sure
Yeah,
that
it's
wasn't
there.
changed. Okay, I want to make sure.
Yeah.
So subject to some editing on wording, any other questions? Will help from Christine in a private meeting to get her comments on it. So I think we'll hold off any approval of these till we hear from the auditor, I think would be probably most appropriate. So before we go into a closed session.
I have one more, I'm sorry.
That's right.
How do you actually dispose of a road?
Disclose the,
Under
So
disposal,
what we-
we disposed of a road.
So, sure, that would be
I would
great.
just say that
Okay,
generally when we do a major improvement, we will, like if it's, I don't know, a mile or half a mile, we would then pull out the old stuff. So it's just.
Okay, or a culvert
Yeah.
replacement or something, okay. so
and that's what I've done,
yeah.
so everything that we
Okay.
paid, we basically, newly
Yeah.
paid, we pulled out the old stuff and
And then
replaced
there's
it.
this little line called transfers, which I don't remember seeing before on the capital asset. It's a small amount, 10,000.
10,000.
It was a reclassification, actually, some movement from assets under construction, so these are assets that were under construction in 2019, all we're doing is
For
transferring work in
2017.
process to the actual completed, to the asset
So
category.
where would it, oh, it's, okay.
It's
so-
to
yeah,
$10,129
so
you're
it's just
talking
under-
about,
I
yeah.
missed the column total.
So it was
Oh,
roads
okay.
that were not completed
That's
and were in
there.
work in process last year.
And then all my other comments about not matching notes and stuff.
They've been addressed, so either will, thank you for going through those so carefully, Allison.
Fred, you okay down there?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, you good? Everybody's good?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I think we'll move to a closed meeting. There's some blah, blah, blah here under 5.3 on why we're going to a closed meeting. All those in favor of the blah, blah, moved and seconded.